While it is crucial to talk about the relationships we value at home in our personal lives, it is equally important to value the relationships we cultivate at work. But what happens when you cannot really separate work and home relationships? The number of female entrepreneurs has risen significantly over the years, and it is safe to assume that we spend a significant amount of time with our co-founders. Today, we are talking to Mai Bach, a restaurateur and entrepreneur who has successfully built 3 restaurants and co-founded a CPG brand. She's going to share with us her secret to effective communication in building both a business and a life with her husband and co-founders. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soft Power Project. And today we have a really exciting guest. Her name is Mai Bach. She is busy. So she is a restaurateur and entrepreneur. She has 3 restaurants so far and a CPG company. And I know she has an incredibly busy schedule. She just opened a restaurant this year. And I can't wait to get into the conversation with her. So hi, Mai.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I always get a little bit embarrassed about the intro because I think when you're in it, you kind of like don't recount everything that's happening. So, yeah, when you take account for the last 13 years, you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess I have been doing stuff.
That's what happened when you're doing something really well. Everything just flies by, right?
Oh my God, I mean, well, or you're just like so deep in it, you just lose track of time. You start taking on so many projects, you don't even know what's happening anymore. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're also joined by her cat as well. So
Yeah, you might hear a little cameo every once in a while. You might even see her. She's just really sorry about this. She's just very needy right now. I think it's because we haven't been home a lot because of the new restaurant, like you said. So whenever we're home, they're just like, please, like, stay with me. Now she wants to be on camera.
Aw. Yeah, for anyone who's watching YouTube, this is very cute. I love that. A little
This is
cameo.
this is kind of life. Like we don't have kids, but we do have cats. So nowhere near as much, but yeah, like while we're home, they've been really needing some attention.
Oh yeah, 100%, especially with her schedule. And yeah, I just wanted to set a little context for our international listeners if you're not in Taiwan. So Mai, actually, you're from LA. You're not from here. You're from LA, and both you and your husband don't even speak Mandarin, right? Am I correct?
Well, actually, my husband does speak Mandarin. He grew up in San Diego. I grew up in Orange
Mm,
County, but we actually met in LA. But we
mm,
both went to UCLA, and that's where we met. Our first year, we were friends. And then we didn't actually start dating until maybe our 3rd year of college. That's when we were kind of both ready. And yeah, so it actually started as a friendship and then it turned into something more. But yes, I grew up in Orange County. My background is I'm Vietnamese. So actually, Orange County in California has one of the largest Vietnamese populations outside of Vietnam.
right.
So a lot of refugees came and settled in Southern California, specifically Orange County. So it has like a very strong Vietnamese community. So I'm really lucky that I kind of grew up around a lot of other Vietnamese people, and my mom kept very like close touch with her roots and everything. So
Hmm.
I do have like a very strong Vietnamese identity as well as a very strong American identity. But yeah, I do not speak any Mandarin. I can't say that I speak Mandarin today. It's been, almost 18 years. So it is a little embarrassing, but that also goes to show how difficult of a language it is. I unfortunately didn't commit to doing classes when I first got here because
Hmm.
it was supposed to be a very short period of time that I was here. And then it just snowballed. And as like you become an entrepreneur, you kind of have to prioritize like what is important, and it just
Yeah.
became day-to-day operations for us, like to
Hmm.
carve out the whatever, like 3 hours a day for immersion it would take. It just wasn't feasible at the time,
Right.
and maybe someday, I don't know, like I don't take it off the table, but as my brain gets older, I don't know how elastic it is. I want to have a growth mindset about it, but I'm also trying to be realistic about, what my brain's capability is at this age. And I know language learning is really good for your brain health, so maybe someday. I don't say never, but we met in LA, and he actually studied Mandarin, and he double majored in
Mm,
economics and Mandarin. So his Mandarin is what actually brought us to Taiwan.
right. Oh, I
Yes.
see.
Yeah, so after he traveled to China for a summer to
Right.
kind of like get a better understanding of the language and the culture, he decided he kind of wanted to do like a full year in China to finish out his language learning. And at that time, I was doing public relations, entertainment public relations, because in your LA, it's so glamorous. You're right next to
It is.
Hollywood.
Yeah,
And I was,
that's the job you should have, right, in LA.
yeah. And it seemed so fun and
Hmm.
exciting. And I was a communications major. So at UCLA, we have like an amazing communication studies program. And if you want to do mass or you want to go into like entertainment, it's really a good opportunity because a lot of the professors can get you internships with like the top PR firms, and like the studios are right there. So I did do that for about 2 years, and then I kind of realized it wasn't for me. Like it just wasn't going to be like the fulfilling career that I didn't know at the time that I was yearning for, but I just realized, oh, I don't know if I can do this. So when he said he wanted to do a year in China, and he asked me like, "Do you want to come?" And then I was kind of like, "Okay." It was pretty much like that flippant. Like he's just
Mm.
like, "I don't think there's any way she's going to say yes to this." And then I did. So then we kind of had to sit down and think about, okay, what does that look like if I'm coming with him with no Mandarin background? And, China 15 years ago was very different. So he knew the culture shock would probably be really intense for me. So he had Taiwanese language exchange partners in LA. And he said, I know of this place, Taiwan. Maybe we can do that first. It'll kind of be like a soft landing so you can kind
Right.
of acclimate yourself to being in Asia. And then we can go over to China.
Right.
So yeah, like that's kind of what brought us to Taiwan was actually
Hmm.
his interest in Mandarin.
Right. So
Yeah.
have you actually made it to China, or does this?
Funny you asked. Actually, after our second year in Taiwan, we had been working a lot. And so at the time, I didn't really feel a connection to Taiwan. And I was like, okay, I'm ready. We can, try it. So we ended up doing a 6-month backpacking trip where we went to almost every province in China. And we also checked out Southeast Asia with the intention to kind of scout what kind of city we would like to live in, what other places could potentially be a new home for us. And then I realized over 6 months, I was like, oh no, China is way too intense. I cannot do it. So initially, because he chose Taipei, I decided that we should try Shanghai. So he gave me the choice
See.
because he chose
Right.
Taipei. He let me have the choice for, our next destination.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, Shanghai. And then after like 2 or 3 trips into Shanghai, I just was like, oh my God, this city is like too big. It's too massive. It felt really overwhelming.
Hmm.
So the moment I kind of expressed that concern,
Hmm.
he just looked at me and goes, well, do you want to go back to Taipei?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I was like, yes, actually I do. And then so when we made that decision in 2011
Hmm.
to come back to Taipei, we said, okay, we're going to come back to Taipei as if it is our home rather than this kind of 1 year gap year destination.
Right.
And that's
Right.
when Taipei started to really open up to us and we started to really understand why it's such a great place to live. Like we
Yeah.
actually committed to furniture,
Right.
like,
You're not sitting on
like
boxes anymore.
yeah, like, like not just hand-me-downs. Like we committed to furniture we
Yeah.
wanted. And,
Right. Right.
we lived in an area not just because it was like super cheap, but because like
Hmm.
it was in like it was convenient. It was close to metro. It had like a lot of stuff going on around it. So I think when we made that shift, that's when
Hmm.
Taipei really was like, oh, this is actually a really amazing place to live. So 18 years
Yeah.
later, that's kind of how
Yeah.
it happened.
So, no, I loved it that you talked about your relationship with your husband because it's almost like you guys were taking on this huge adventure together. You grew up together, you learned things. Because today, I think what I really wanted to ask you about, and I'm sure a lot of women out there is eager to know, is how do you actually establish business and still managing a successful life with your loved ones, your life partners, your husband? Because I think there are so many women now are becoming entrepreneurs. And it's easy to actually, do this adventure with someone that you know so well. But we all heard the advice, it's too hard, don't do it. And I just wanted to hear from you, what do you think about that? Because you basically took on this adventure with him. And, how has it been like so far?
I mean, it's not easy for sure. Like we've been able to do it so long because we have found a way to communicate and navigate like the really tough parts of entrepreneurship, starting a business, being married, like balancing all of these things takes a lot of work. And,
Hmm.
obviously when you're starting a new business, you kind of become consumed with it. So it's like, how do you
Yeah.
even have time to then manage your relationship? It kind of, in a way, not to say easier, but like if you're starting a business separate outside of your marriage, you kind of have to work on both, right? Like you have to maintain both. But if you're in it together and maintaining the business, you kind of are also maintaining your marriage together because you are spending every day together all the time. So, a lot of struggle for women when they're starting a business is how do I juggle family life, maintaining my relationship with my partner when I do need to kind of have a trade-off here and spend 100% of my time building this new business. So, the upside of starting something with your partner, your life partner, your husband, your wife, is that you are going to not have to worry about not spending enough time together because you guys are going to be on top of each other, right? Like everything is so intertwined. So that would, I would say, if you like the person you're with, that is a complete upside. So yeah, but for us, I think fundamentally it just comes down to how do you and your partner communicate. And I think that's important. Business, marriage, it doesn't really matter. If you can find a partner that you can communicate really honestly, clearly, openly, and also with a lot of like benefit of the doubt, like you
Mm,
always give each other like grace in terms of what's coming out. Like
right.
my husband can be really blunt, but not in like a unkind way, just in a very, he's just trying to get his thoughts out. And I
Right.
can actually like translate it and I can kind of get to why that sentence is coming out. And if I feel like I can't like understand where that's coming from, I will tell him. I'm like, that
Mm.
was kind of rude. Like, what do
Mm-hmm.
you mean by that? Like, I'm not going to immediately assume that you were trying to be rude, but it came out
Mm.
very rude. So, like, rephrase it or give me where this is coming from. And then he'll give me the logic. He'll be like, oh, sorry, I was just like really trying to get this thought out. And then he'll give me context and I'll be like, aha, okay, I got it. Like, that wasn't
Mm.
actually directed at me. It was just kind of like a thought that came out. So, I think what happens a lot in partnerships is there is some broken trust in a way, right? And so that's when you don't give your partner the benefit of the doubt
Mm.
of how they're saying something is maybe not the intention
Right.
of how they're saying it. So
Mm.
that fundamentally comes down to trust. And I know it's super cliche and it's been a book but a really smart mentor once told me, you can only move at the speed of trust.
Mm. Mm.
And it resonated with me because it sounds very abstract, right? Like trust is not like a physical thing, but
Yeah.
when it happens to you, you kind of go, ah, this is totally slowing us down. Like us
Mm.
having to go back and forth and kind of negotiate or relitigate something because we don't trust what the other person is saying or doing, that
Right.
takes time, right? And in
Yeah.
a business, time equals money. Like if you can't move
Right.
fast enough, you're just wasting resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it can be really hard to navigate, but like trust and communication is like very cliche for a reason, but that's
Right.
fundamentally what it comes down to.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, could you give me some like stories? Because I understand, you guys came to Taiwan and the first restaurant you opened, Uchacha, that location eventually you had to let that go, right? After COVID. But at the same time, I mean, now you own actually three restaurants. So there are some hard choices. There are definitely, I think, building business, everyone understand there's ups and downs. Were there any experience that you had that actually led you to more trust and to trying to understand how you communicate? Because I feel like in good times, everything is great. But
Hmm.
in harder times, that's really when the trust and the communication became really important. Yeah, just wondering if you have any stories that we can learn from.
So like you mentioned, so our first cafe, our first Uchacha was a small
Hmm.
cafe, or I shouldn't say was, is a small cafe near Guting MRT in Taipei. That location we do still have today.
Hmm.
In 2017 or 2018, I can't remember right now, it's when we opened up our flagship Uchacha. So
Okay.
it was a much bigger
Mm,
full service restaurant. So our original cafe, Uchacha, is very small. It's like grab and go. It's like
hmm.
a very neighborhood type of eatery.
Uh-huh.
And we wanted to go a little bit bigger. We kind of like wanted to stretch ourselves and see like
Right.
could we open a bigger space with more seats and make the menu a little bit bigger, have a full blown kitchen. So we were pretty ambitious as, first time restaurateurs, neither of us working like very long in the restaurant industry to do this. So we knew it was ambitious, but we're like, I think we have enough resources and enough knowledge to do it. Looking back, I'm like, ooh, we made some choices, like I wish I had known better, but all experiences lead you to whatever eventually you're going to do, right? Like you just
Hmm.
continually build on it. So, like you mentioned, because of COVID, when it started in, what was that, 2020? And when it started in 2020, fortunately, Taiwan did not have to go into a lockdown. But because of the really strict quarantine rules, it meant
Hmm.
like a lot of people didn't want to go outside, didn't were, fearful of catching it because then they would be on lockdown. So a lot of people just stopped eating out. And then there
Hmm.
was a lot, and then they started doing, no indoor dining, and they started having a lot of regulations and restrictions. So at that time, Spencer and I still felt very strongly about the location, and he had figured out, okay, if we, call in some money from our investors and maybe take a loan, we can survive this. So we did. And then we survived, and then it was looking better, but then Taiwan decided to lift all restrictions and just let community spread happen. But the
Mm.
only restriction they didn't lift was the 2-week quarantine if you caught COVID, right? So in essence, they caused like another lockdown because
Mm.
when community spread happened, that means
Yeah.
everyone was catching it and then everyone
Yeah.
was in a 2-week quarantine.
Yeah.
So we were
Hmm.
still seeing like a lot of major consequences of
Hmm.
COVID.
Hmm.
And with this second round of community spread, we kind of looked at each other and we're just like, we used everything we had to survive kind of that first round. And he told me, he looked at
Hmm.
me and he's like, I've looked at the numbers. If we don't close this location, it will basically put our new project, Shinjuku, in jeopardy
Right.
and Uchacha, our original cafe, in jeopardy,
Mm.
just to keep this one location around. And at that time, like I really thought like, oh, you're just giving up, right? Like you're gonna let it fail. You're just giving up. I really didn't want to accept that reality. I was just like, no, there must be a way, right? There's got to be a way. And he's just like, you have to trust me. Like, this is the best decision for the company.
Right.
And at that point, I just kind of had to say, okay. So, like, that was a major point in testing, like our defined roles. Do I trust him in his defined role as kind of like the COO, CFO? I'm more of the creative, I'm the vision, I'm the one who's like very passionate about veganism, but he's the one who has like the stronger business background. He's the one looking at the numbers and the trends and forecasting. And no matter how I was feeling about the situation, I did just have to give trust in his ability to see what was going to be best financially for the company. And it was the right decision. It was a really heartbreaking and terrible and awful decision, and it caused like major burnout on my side, but it was the right decision.
And looking back, how did you both actually manage that burnout during that time?
I think women just tend to experience burnout differently and maybe harder. Even though we're kind of designed, evolutionarily speaking, to withstand a lot of stress, physically, emotionally, mentally, I think we also feel things more deeply,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Which then
Hmm.
affects your body differently. He just kind of went into like survival mode. Like
Mm.
he just kept thinking, how do I move ahead? How do I move ahead? And I think that was his coping mechanism, right? We still had a new project that was launched. And so he just threw everything into how do we make this successful, right? Whereas I was still very much grieving how much we put into this other space and like what did that mean for Cha Cha if we couldn't make Cha Cha succeed. And I was just so tired after that. And luckily, I recognized it after many months of like suffering and being like in a very dark space. And so I had a conversation with Spencer and I said, like, I need to step away for a bit. And he was like, okay, you do what you need to do. We'll figure it out. We have a big enough team now. And I'm so thankful for that because I think when we were a much smaller team, there was no way I could have done that. And the business has been okay. But we had built enough, like a big enough team to where me stepping away meant it could maintain itself and it'd be okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I stepped away for about like a year and a half. So like that first like 6 months was just kind of like not doing much, not feeling motivated. I didn't really want to do anything. I was just kind of
Hmm.
like surviving.
Hmm.
And then and then I slowly started to build some routines back up and started looking after myself again. And then I started to feel ready to like do something. But that something I still very much had like a trauma reaction to going back to the the restaurants. So I said to Spencer, I was like, look, I think I'm ready to like go work and earn money again. How do you feel about me looking for like a 9 to 5 corporate job?
Right.
It's like a grass is greener situation. We started
Yeah.
our entrepreneurship journey so young. We started at 27. So I never had like the corporate experience. So I was kind of like, I kind of want to do that and see what it's like, have a 9 to 5, not have to worry about anything after I'm off. And yeah, it was definitely a grass is greener situation of that seems so nice, I can just clock out, turn off my brain, and I'm done, and I earn some money, all good. Unfortunately, because of my top priority being I want to stay in Taipei
Yeah.
and I don't know Mandarin,
Yeah.
right? So opposing things right there. So
Yeah.
I realized finding like a normal corporate job wasn't going to be that easy. So then I started realizing I need to move through my network and all like the
Yeah.
wonderful people I've met in Taipei and start putting the call out. Meanwhile, Spencer was meeting with a group of friends for board games every week, and one of them had mentioned that her girlfriend was also ready to like start something new or try something new. And what she was thinking about and what her background was in beverages. And for the last like 4 to 5 years, I'd just been this thought, and I'd written it on our whiteboard that I wanted to figure out like a beverage that could rebrand traditional Chinese medicine for like a new generation. Like, how can we use all these amazing ingredients and put them back into people's like routines and lives, and how can we
Yeah.
reap the benefits of like these amazing ingredients? So that had been a thought that had been bouncing around my head for a while.
Hmm.
Spencer's like, hey, look, I know you want like a 9 to 5, but there's a friend who's looking to do something. Maybe you guys should get together and chat. And
Mm.
so we kind of did. And I told her, I was like, look, I'm not ready to start anything, but I'll come work with you and co-work with you while I look for a job. And she's like, okay. And then like every day we would meet 2 or 3 times a week. And then we would talk about, like what she was doing, what I was doing. And then I was just like, okay, you know what? Screw it. Let's start like founder dating and see if this could potentially turn into something.
Mm.
And then, after like 3 months of doing that, we decided, let's do it. Let's try. And I found
Yeah.
her to be like a really good partner in terms of skill set that I'm lacking. And then for me, vice versa for her.
Right.
And we had originally met because I had a late ADHD diagnosis.
Hmm.
And when I posted about it, she was like one of the first to come forward and be like, "Oh my God, that I have ADHD. I've had it for a long time. If you need any help, like let me know." So she was really great about that. And so that's kind of how we originally met. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I'm super curious. Do you actually bring in any of the experience and insight that you've learned working with your husband, Spencer, into this new relationship that you have with your co-founder for
hmm
Goot?
I do, because I think, when you're young and you're first starting, and like as a couple, we've grown together. We've almost been together for 20 years, which is crazy to say out loud. Um, I know, like sometimes, like numbers, you can't process them. You're like, how,
Yeah.
what, how, why? Those memes online of millennials being like, how is it 2025, but I'm still only 26 years old?
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Like mentally, you're
I
not
know.
there yet.
Exactly.
Yeah, we grew together. Like our communication styles have definitely developed and we've matured. And so all those learnings in terms of like what's the best way to approach a business and like a partnership,
Mm,
I've taken all of that right into this new one. So we were
right.
very intentional in the beginning of like, what am I looking for in a co-founder? What is my communication style? How do I respond to criticism? What is the best way to give me criticism? Like we wrote this all down on paper and shared it with each other, right? As part of like our dating process. And so it was, without like my experience of going through building the business with Spencer, I would not know all these things about myself, right? And
Mm,
like be hyper aware of what I need to look for in a partner.
mm,
Yeah, it was like a very intentional process in terms of like us choosing each other as co-founders.
mm.
Yeah.
And what is the importance of writing things down?
I think it's accountability, right? It's
Mm.
essentially like a contract. Like if it's like a very soft contract of,
Yeah.
like if I come at her a certain way or she comes at me a certain way, it's just like, look, you knew what you were getting into. Like we wrote all of this stuff down, and like just as, or like if I need a reminder, if I need to have a tough conversation with her, right? I need to go back
Yeah.
to, I can actually go back to that and be like, okay, how should I approach her about XYZ, right? And even roles and responsibilities, right? Like I need to remind myself, okay, this is my sphere, and I need to trust that she's going to do whatever she's going to do in her sphere. It's the same thing, right? So having all this stuff written down, there's no miscommunication, and it's actually very helpful, like cliff notes or shortcut as to how should I approach a situation, remind myself, like all of our memories aren't great, but it's like a great way to remind yourself. It's also why companies
Yeah.
write down their mission, their values. Like
Yeah.
you just have that reminder to yourself of like, okay, how can I deal with this situation? Because, intense situations, you can let feelings take over and you just forget
Yeah.
everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But I think at the same time, dealing with conflicts allows you to understand so much
Hmm.
about the other person, right? And I mean, how do you look at conflicts, and whether it's conflicts in personal life and or in business? What's your attitude towards conflicts?
Oh my God, I hate it. But like it's inevitable, but I'm really like I get very tense if I feel like a confrontation is going to happen, if I know it's going to happen. When I was younger, I would definitely run away from it. Like
Right.
avoid at all costs, like people please, try to de-escalate, make light of the situation, try to avoid it at all costs. But yeah, as you get older, you realize, okay, like you said, conflict is really important because then you can understand people better. You understand their feelings better, their perspectives, why they move a certain way, why they do things a certain way. And because those are the moments like you reveal almost like your true self, right?
Yeah.
Because you're heightened, you're emotional, and
Yeah.
that's when things really get clear. And
Hmm.
so I still have a reflex to run, like I don't think that will ever truly go away. Like
Yeah.
I still need like a moment to like reflect. Like I can't engage immediately because I will just cry. Like that's my immediate response. Like if I'm in a confrontation and I don't have a moment to pull myself out of it, my
Hmm.
reflex is I will get really emotional and my emotional turns into crying. Whether
Right.
it's I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm, sad, whatever, it just turns into an overwhelming sensation of like, I need to cry. So I do try to like remove myself for a little bit, but then I work really hard to come back to the table and like have a conversation. In the past, I would avoid, right? I would just remove myself and then like be silent for days and like not come back. Right. And that's really not healthy or helpful. Right. But I still have tinges of it in the beginnings of like, I try to remind myself, okay, well, you can take this moment to process and reflect and
Yeah.
gather yourself, but you have to go back
Right.
to the conversation.
Right.
You can't just stay here and process until, like forever. So there's like kind of that balance of like,
Mm.
if I get really upset, my husband kind of knows to give me just like a little bit of space.
Mm.
And then he will like try to initiate something. And that will bring me back to the conversation or to be able to express my feelings because it can be really hard to get me out of that cycle. And I work really hard to try to get myself out of it. But sometimes it's 50-50 whether, he initiates or I initiate having that tough conversation. In terms of like business conflict, I do think about it and then I try to have a conversation with myself about like, why do I need to have this conversation with her? Is it really important or am I, making something out of nothing? But we try to have this rule of not keeping things in. So if I have the thought, I try to address it. Or else you
Mm.
can spiral, right? You can
Yeah.
spiral having these conversations with yourself. So I try not to have those conversations with myself too much. I try to address it with her like
Mm.
immediately and I try to
Right.
do it like and I usually maybe write the conversation out first
Mm.
and
Mm.
like make points for myself to be like this is why I want to have the conversation so I don't like derail myself. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really useful. I mean, you mentioned that you guys had this dating period where you really just be very intentional and be very honest with what you're looking for, how do you communicate? What do you, what's your communication style? And you mentioned that taking criticism. And, I was definitely ex people pleaser. I'm still working on that. Like you, it's
Yes.
a long road.
Yes.
But taking criticism has always been a bit of a challenge, especially if it's coming from someone that you really cared about. How do
Mhm.
you take criticism? Any lessons I can learn from?
Oof. With my ADHD diagnosis is kind of the freedom is learning how my brain works differently and how it processes things and how it feels things because it is, as they say, neurodivergent. So a lot of what is talked about in the mainstream is going to be for neurotypical brains. And
Right.
trying to fit that mold creates an even another layer of stress. Like you're trying to follow it, but then you're like, how come I can't? It's not working. And then so that's another layer of stress. So with that, learning about like kind of it sounds dark, but like comorbidities with ADHD is like you can be like rejection sensitive dysphoria. So just like body dysphoria, you can take something that maybe might seem small to someone else and it just feels like overwhelming rejection, right? And it like is like a physical body response. Like even in your head, if you're like, it's not that big, but you actually have like a physical response
Right,
to it,
right.
right? Like the
Hmm.
knots in your stomach, like
Yeah.
you feel a little vomity, you feel,
Yeah.
everything sinks. So, like learning about that, it does help you kind of raise your awareness level of like, okay, is this person actually like telling me I suck? Like, no. And if you can, try to rewire your brain that way, if you, I think the first step is like awareness, right? Like if you're aware, like criticism does hurt, like hit me hard, you
Yeah.
can let people around you know, like, hey, I don't like want to be so soft, but like just be a little gentle with me if you have feedback, right? You
Mm.
don't need to, butter me up or anything like that, but just try to phrase it in a way that is not like it's me, be like, the action is the issue, right? It's not like a me issue, it's the action was the issue. And so, in terms of like taking criticism better, I think you can't control how people are always going to approach you or act towards you. So,
Yeah.
half of it is reminding yourself, like, not in like in everyday circumstance that you are capable, you are those
Yeah.
affirmations do come really in handy because if you've built that habit when it does come at you, you can just be like, okay, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm smart. I'm capable. I just
I'm
maybe
worthy.
had, yeah, I'm worthy. I just had like a moment
Yeah.
where I did something not great and I can fix it. So it's that reflex, which is why it's so popular. And when we're talking about like in wellness, sometimes wellness can feel
Yeah.
really soft.
Yeah.
But I think when you can learn about how your brain, like neuroplasticity, right? How your brain can actually rewire itself through habits. And actually, you can like convince your brain of stuff, right? Like just by repetition, just through repetition. Which is crazy because you're like, why? How can I fool my brain? But you can. And it's wired to like protect you and find like the least path of resistance. So it doesn't like hard things. It doesn't like a lot of friction. But if you can train it to think a certain way, when that friction happens, it will go to its most habitual response. So if you're saying like, I'm super smart, or, like if you can say something and convince your brain that you are that person, when that tough moment comes, your brain will
Hmm.
kind of kick into action.
Mm-mm.
And it's not to say like I am great at this. I don't do affirmations every day. I would love to be the person that does that, but it just doesn't it's not like a natural response, right? And it's not like something I have built like a really strong habit around. So, yeah, everyone keep working on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think what you're saying is that, affirmation, that's just one of the tools that you could use, right? To really help
Yes.
yourself. Are there any tools that you find it easier to do, something that you could do every single day? Yeah, just like what's in your toolbox for your mental health?
Oof, I am not great about it these days because, most people want to focus on their mental health when they're in the dark place, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you most need it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the time you should be training it is when you least need it. And so I'm in the business day to day. It's really hard for me to pull myself away and be like, I need to do that 5 minutes of meditation, or I need to have, the journaling, or I need to write my affirmations, or I need to remind myself of my goals. You can get so swept up in day to day, and you're just like, that's not a priority right now. I just need to get through my
Yeah.
freaking task list that has 20 things on it.
Yeah.
The one thing I am good about, like in terms of commitment to myself, is movement. So I
Mm.
do commit to like trying to walk everywhere. And, there was a period of time we were renovating the new restaurant. I could not go to the gym. Like it just wasn't possible. But I gave myself some grace because I'm like, look, I'm moving bags of bricks around and I'm still like, renovating, and we're still, doing a lot of physical tasks. So I
Yeah.
wasn't too hard on myself about that. But when that period kind of wound down, I was still tired, but I said, okay, I need to get back to going to the gym once a week.
Yeah.
And I'm going to build
Mm.
to 2 times a week, which eventually hopefully will bring me back to 3 times a week of strength training, which is so important for women. So a lot of your listeners are women, like strength train guys, like our bones, man,
Yeah.
they need help. Yeah. So that's like the one thing that I do commit is like the physical movement and walking. I am good about that. It's the mental side that I do struggle with because it requires a different, like, I think a different level of stillness and
Hmm.
quietness that's not easy for me.
But I do feel like that movement is definitely one of the most important thing, and also it's easier, right, to commit to that. And especially in
Yeah.
Taipei, walking around, it's actually quite, I mean, it's really hot now, but walking around is not so difficult. So I think committing to that, that's a really incredible, useful tool to have. And I just had to laugh because you're just like moving a bag of bricks.
I mean,
Did you
this is like,
actually
yes,
move
true
bags of
story.
bricks?
Like move bags of debris and like have to carry like cinder blocks or, like stuff like that. Life of an entrepreneur, guys.
I know.
Sometimes you just got to get it done. Yeah.
I mean, I love how our conversation actually turns into this masterclass of communication, internal communication, and also external communication with your business partners, your loved ones. And you mentioned that wellness to you is soft, right? And I think a majority of the people, that's kind of their impression of
Hmm.
wellness.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you, since
Hmm.
this is a project on exploring the soft and the power and the bold.
Mm.
When you hear that term, what's your definition?
Of soft power.
Hmm.
I did mention the name of your podcast to someone, a friend, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's such a good name." I was like, "You know what? It really is." So kudos to you. It is such a good name because, yeah, they do seem like opposing concepts, right? Like, if you're going to be powerful, you have to be like very aggressive or very
Yeah.
strong or like. But in terms of like for me, for soft power, it's kind of like how do you move through the world and make an impact that,
Hmm.
is not so overt, right? Like
Hmm.
for me, I obviously can't like fully communicate with all of my staff in like a fluent way. We've been blessed that a lot of them have been educated since they were young with English, so we can
Hmm.
have like some level of communication. But like in terms of soft power, I think it all comes down to like your actions. I try to be a model for a lot of like our team on how to treat other people, how we want our staff to be treated.
Mhm.
When we first opened up Uchacha, one of like the main things I really wanted was to change how service workers were compensated
Mhm.
and treated. And so like we committed to, 6-hour shifts that weren't broken, so like
Wow.
they could have some kind of
Right.
work-life balance,
Mm.
which is not a concept I fully believe in, but I just mean like in terms of if they wanted
Right.
to pursue something outside of work, they could,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
If they had other interests or things like that. And we tried to pay like always stay 10 to 15% above the minimum wage that was set by the government. So like we kind of wanted to foster like a really worker first
Wow.
environment. And so
Right.
in terms of that, when we have issues or when we have, like staff that are maybe not living up to our expectations or like do something, we try to remind ourselves like how would we want to be treated, right? Like
Mm.
we try to let them fail. We try to show them that it's okay to fail, it's okay to make a mistake. Like, we're here to help your growth and teach you and not punish you. And we're not trying to like be little dictators in our little empire. So I think that's like for me is how do you impact other people's lives through your actions is kind of like my like little soft power, right? Is
Mm. Mm.
how am I affecting and making hopefully their lives better by creating a workplace that they aren't scared to come to, enjoy coming to. Hopefully, like the ultimate goal is that they actually enjoy coming to work and being with their coworkers. And yes, it's hard work. Like service is hard work, but how can we make the environment not stressful?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's such a beautiful way to put it. And throughout the conversation today, I have to say, I mean, you're so intentionally trying to improve yourself and, be aware of where you're at and how do you communicate with others. I mean, to me, that is soft power because that's resilience, that's strength, and it's quiet. You're not out there telling everyone I'm such a great boss, but you're really showing by example and just to be so honest with yourself and with your co-founder that you're setting a really good, fair, grounded place for the employees to flourish. And I think that's what it's all about. And I think that's incredible that you hold, the tremendous power and softness as well.
Well, thanks so much. I'm really glad you're focusing on this concept because I think we need more of it right now in the world as it is. So I really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. No, it wasn't planned, but I'm so happy that it ended up to be this masterclass of communication course.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah, if you have any, because you were talking about how you and Celine, your co-founder,
Mhm.
you guys had this like co-founder questions that you go through, right? Do you have any other like a list of things that you list out that you guys talked about? I think that's going to be really useful for a lot of people that's listening.
Off the top of my head, I can't
Yeah.
pull anything out only because Celine is like a meticulous list maker. And so she does, she really likes to have she has a lot of ideas. And so she knows this. And so she tries to really get everything down on paper so that it can leave her brain and she can kind of move on to something else. But so in terms of like anything that she's interested in, she's going to like really do a deep dive on it. And so she did like so much research on like founder questionnaires and like what should you look for in another founder and like and like she compiled it all and then she went through it and then she kind of tried to whittle it down to what she thought was like most
Wow.
important. And
Right.
at one point, I think she had like 100 questions. And I think I looked at it and I was like, Celine, I'm not. And she's like, no, 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 don't look at that one. That was just like draft one where I'm just like gathering everything. And then she kind of distilled it down to, like core questions. So in terms of like questions, so you can imagine in terms of questions for
Mm-hmm.
like the company, like
Yeah.
what do we want to do? What is our
Right.
objective? Who are we targeting? Why are we doing this? I
Mm-hmm.
think fundamentally the core of the question is always like, why do you want to do this? If you
Right.
do not have a strong enough conviction or passion about why you're doing something, it's going to be
Uh-huh.
really tough to power through like the entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah,
Cause yeah, there's gonna be times
absolutely.
you're just like, I'm so over this, right? And you're just like, no, this is why I want to do it. And money can be part of it, but money only takes you so far. Everyone needs it to live, survive, have freedom, but it can't drive you to build something from 0 to 1.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Like you need some other thing, whether it's like I want to do this for other people or I want to do this for me. Like you
Yeah.
have to find that motivation of like why you
Mm-hmm.
want to build this thing.
Right.
So that question of she's like, why do we want to start this company was pretty similar. Like we both are females that suffered health issues and we really wanted to address that and figure out how do
Right.
we help other women kind of
Uh-huh.
like be their healthiest self.
Mm, mm, right. And I think you also mentioned that you covered your each communication styles. How do you take
Mhm.
conflicts and criticism? Anything else that you guys kind of talked about that's a little bit more like understanding who you are and understanding each other?
Yeah, like our working styles.
Mm.
Like, do you need a lot of quiet or, like, do you need to be around people, music or no music? Like, can I ask
Oh,
you
that's
questions while you're,
important.
yeah, can I ask you questions while you're working? Like, I, I have a tendency to interrupt people with my thoughts. And fortunately for me, because I've been like, the co-founder in the past, my team has been very patient about being interrupted by me. I try to be aware of it and I try not to interrupt them too much, or I will try to ask the question like, hey, can I ask you this? And not just be like,
Mm,
hey, blah 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 blah, give me whatever,
right.
right? I try to be mindful of that, but it's like
Yeah.
maybe my excitement or I feel like I'm gonna lose the thought. So it kind of can come
Mm.
out. And it is the case. Celine was clear with me. She's like, I have to finish whatever I'm doing because if you interrupt me, I will totally lose whatever, train of
Right.
thought, whatever groove I was in. It will
Mm,
mess me up. So I have to be a
mm.
lot more intentional about like interrupting her. And I have to be more clear about when like I need to not be interrupted. Right. So like if I'm doing something that I know needs my 100% focus or I need like a lot of time to finish it because I do production. She can't come and ask me like a bunch of questions that require my thinking if I'm doing something very physical, manual, right? Because I have to keep everything clean. I have to make sure it's our product, right? So those kind of boundaries for us, we had to draw. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Working styles.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
important. And I
Yeah.
I think this is so incredibly useful because you had an experience, again, not setting these boundaries, what would happen, right? And
Hmm.
I think this is something that everyone who wants to work with your loved ones or just someone that, you share the same passion with, you have to have this conversation and understand where each other's coming from. I'm gonna try to list down the question that you just mentioned, and because I
Make
think
like
it's
a
so
little
important.
cheat sheet. Make like a little cheat
Yeah,
sheet for everyone. Okay. I can also try to find it somewhere deep in our
yeah,
Notion. Like,
that would be really helpful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for today, and I cannot wait to share this episode with everyone. And congratulations on everything. It's been such a pleasure, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much. I'm really glad I met you. Thanks so much for the support. I really appreciate it.